You know that old saying, right? Seeing is believing. It's something we've all heard a million times. But what exactly happens when what we see completely defies every known law of science, logic, and just plain common sense? Today, we are opening the vault on some of the absolute most baffling, unexplained visual data ever recorded in human history. It really makes you wonder, do photographs always tell the truth? I mean, especially now, in an age where digital manipulation is literally everywhere. But the cases we're about to dive into, they've stumped both hardcore scientists and skeptical debunkers for decades. So let's go through the evidence, piece by piece, and try to figure out if we're looking at terrifying realities or just spectacularly executed hoaxes. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, cryptids. These are your biological anomalies. Picture this. It's 1964, and photographer Robert Liserek is out at Stonehaven Bay in Queensland. He manages to photograph something wild, a massive, swirling black mass that looks kind of like a gigantic tadpole just lurking right there in the shallow, sandy water. Naturally, it's sent absolute shockwaves through the cryptozoology world. Now, skeptics will claim it's just a clever, practical trick or maybe a really dense school of fish, but Liserek, he took his claim to the grave. And honestly, to this day, it takes a brave swimmer to jump into the water at Stonehaven Bay. Now, let's head over to the Florida Everglades, where a seriously bizarre letter surfaced years ago. The writers described this foul-smelling, 7-foot-tall entity just standing right there in their garden. Apparently, when the camera flash went off, the creature froze completely before just vanishing into the brush. But honestly, it's the sign-off of that letter that really gives you chills. It just says, "God bless. I prefer to remain anonymous." Locals down there know this creature simply as the skunk ape. And the crazy thing is, as handheld cameras became more of an everyday item, these myths didn't just vanish like you might expect. The evidence actually got stronger. Take Dave Shealy's footage from July 2000. Unlike those classic blurry old photos, his video captures a dark, bipedal figure slogging through the swamp with this incredibly unhurried, eerie gait. It totally elevated the skunk ape from a spooky campfire story to something you could actually watch moving right in front of you. Of course, you literally cannot talk about bipedal anomalies without bringing up the legendary 1967 Patterson Gimlin Bigfoot film. It's iconic for a reason. When researchers line up a theoretical Sasquatch skeletal model alongside a male gorilla and the figure from the film, the anatomical proportions are just baffling. The hip ratio, the joint placement, the stride length, they don't match a human awkwardly walking around in an ape suit. They actually match the biomechanics of an undocumented giant primate. And here is where it gets incredibly hard to debunk: the raw data. When researchers analyzed a specific 46-frame sequence, which lasts exactly 3 seconds by the way, they calculated the creature was walking at 3.85 miles per hour. That is significantly faster than an average human's casual stride in those conditions. Combined with a confirmed camera speed of 16 frames per second, the math proves one undeniable thing: there is no mechanical manipulation or frame speed trickery happening in that footage. Moving on to Section 2, ghosts, or as we're calling it, photographic illusions. If you've spent any time at all on horror forums, you've definitely seen the Cooper family photo. It's that wholesome family dinner shot with a shadowy body falling upside down from the ceiling. Internet sleuths swore up and down it was real. But the truth? It's entirely mundane. The myth really took off around 2013, but the photo dates back to 2009. Richard Ramsdell, who is actually the kid pictured in the photo, eventually stepped forward and admitted he edited the ghost in himself as an art project. Busted. So, how exactly were so many of these ghostly images faked way before Photoshop was even a thing? Well, it all comes down to double exposure. Basically, by exposing a single frame of film twice, light from 2 entirely different scenes blend together. If a person happens to walk into that second shot, they appear as a semi-transparent floating shadow. It creates an instant, totally perfect ghost. Let's apply that exact trick to one of the most famous ghost photos in history, the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall. For decades, it was hailed as absolute proof of the afterlife, but modern analysis tells a different story. Experts found faint, pale lines cutting right across the stairs, a dead giveaway that 2 images were superimposed. In other cases, people even just smeared grease on the camera lens to create glowing, blurred shapes. So yeah, sometimes ghosts are just darkroom magic. All right, let's look up for Section 3, sky phenomena. We're talking atmospheric anomalies. Now, this next bit isn't sci-fi. This is based on actual spatial distribution data from Project Embla. They were out tracking the famous Hessdalen lights in Norway. This wasn't just people pointing cameras at the sky. It was a highly systematic, machine-driven observation campaign. They managed to map out these bizarre, thermally self-regulated light clusters that hover low to the ground and high in the sky. And based on the spread of the data, these anomalies were scattered all across the valley. 19 kilowatts. Honestly, that number gives physicists a massive headache. That is the peak radiant power output they measured from these floating orbs. Just imagine the raw energy of a small power station compressed into a glowing ball hovering in midair. Whatever these things actually are, they are radiating an absolutely staggering amount of energy into the night sky. To really understand how seriously scientists take this phenomenon, you just have to look at the hardware they brought in. We're talking very low frequency receivers, low power radar, and highly sensitive 1420 megahertz spectrometers, which, fun fact, is the exact frequency astronomers use to hunt for alien signals. Using all this gear, they proved these lights cause magnetic disruptions, they emit radio waves, and they were even clocked on radar moving at an incredible 8,500 meters per second. And when you pass this visual data through a spectrometer, you see how truly bizarre they behave. What looks like a single point of light to the naked eye is actually a chaotic cluster of smaller orbs. They rapidly merge together, they separate, they blink wildly, and sometimes they just instantly vanish into the dark without leaving a single magnetic trace behind. It's fascinating. Which brings us to our final group, Section 4, Witnesses, the unidentified bystanders. Back in 1964, a fireman named Jim Templeton took his daughter for a totally mundane family picnic on the remote Berg Marsh. He swore up and down the area was completely empty, but when he got his photos developed, a massive figure in a white spacesuit was looming right behind his daughter's head. So just a film error, right? Nope. Kodak analysts actually scrutinized the negative and officially confirmed it was genuine. No double exposure, no editing. That spaceman was physically standing there. Our final anomaly takes us straight to an event that quite literally changed history: the 1963 assassination of President JFK in Dealey Plaza. Investigators combing through various films of the tragic event noticed a woman wearing a tan coat and a headscarf, just standing on the grass between Elm and Main streets. She is calmly holding a camera to her face, pointing it directly at the presidential motorcade as the world explodes around her. She became known as the Babushka Lady. What is truly chilling about this is the contrast. As shots rang out and terrified bystanders threw themselves to the ground in absolute panic, this woman remains standing, completely composed, just continuing to film. After it was over, she simply blended right into the crowd and vanished. Years later, a woman named Beverly Oliver claimed to be the Babushka Lady, saying she handed her film over to two men claiming to be FBI agents without ever getting a receipt. That definitive close-up footage, it has never been seen to this day. And that brings us to our conclusion. Truth or illusion? After digging through all these incredible files, we're really left with one big question. Is the real mystery out there in the woods, in the skies, forces operating just beyond the very edge of biology and physics? Or is the mystery actually inside us? Our deep, desperate human desire to believe in the unknown, to fill the boring gaps in our reality with magic and monsters. Look, some photos are clearly exposed as cheap illusions, but others, well, they are still waiting to be solved. So, next time you look at an old photograph, maybe look just a little closer. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. See you next time.